Thank you for joining in tonight. My name is Kelsey Nyman. I'm the coordinator of student communications and happy to host this webinar for all of you tonight. I do apologize for my camera being off. I am home with COVID, but happy to be here and present to you anyways. I do have two lovely women with me here tonight. Emily Isaacs. She is a professor of writing studies. She is especially passionate about working with first year students and helping them flourish during a year of great growth and potential. With two sons of her own in college and one in high school, she is well familiar with all the experience of raising young men in the post-COVID era. Emily's experience working for first year students working with first year students for the last 3 decades led her to spearhead the creation of the university's Strong Student Campaign, which is what we will be presenting for you tonight. We are also here with Blanca Vega. Dr. Blanca Elizabeth Vega was born and raised in New York City to Ecuadorian immigrant parents. She's an associate professor and graduate program coordinator for the Master of Arts in Higher Education program at Montclair State University. Dr. Vega earned her EDD from the prestigious higher and post-secondary education program at Teachers College, Columbia University. With nearly 25 years of administrative, research, and teaching experience in various higher education settings, Dr. Vega's work is rooted in a deep commitment to equity, access, and success for underserved populations in higher education. She demonstrates this by challenging and changing academic structures in the service of student success while working with students closely guiding them through challenges and helping them achieve their academic and personal goals.
Okay, so thank you very much for coming. We're going to go ahead and get started. And as you heard my bio, I created what with a lot of folks here at the university what we're calling the Strong Student Campaign. And the Strong Student Campaign was born as an effort to respond to the post-pandemic learning environment, where many students have had experiences in school where they weren't always challenged. Because during the pandemic, we were challenged so much by life that in many ways our teachers and our schooling was less challenging, right? And so now we're muscling up. And the thing is, we really believe that it's possible. At Montclair State, we will work with students. We will work with students to get their skills at the level they need to be. We will work with students in all sorts of ways. But we do feel very confident that they also need to kind of like stand up. And that it's actually pretty small, simple behaviors that are the pathway to success. Blanca and I were professors today, but we have had plenty of struggles. I have had to work on time management forever. You know, I have ADHD before we even knew it was ADHD, but I developed skills and I have spent my life working on small behavioral strategies to help me be a more productive and successful person, as I suspect all of you have. So that's really what the Strong Student Campaign, to be very explicit and clear with students about what we expect. And it's kind of a promise. You show up and you take these small, simple steps, but you take them regularly. For example, you come to class even when you don't want to. You pay attention even when you don't find your professor interesting. You're really, in all, it's going to add up and you can flourish and you're going to have a very successful career. So that's the idea of the campaign. And as I said, I'm an administrator and a professor who helped launch the campaign. And what we want to do this evening is tell you about it, because your students are going to be seeing the campaign from multiple fronts, and also let you know what you can do to support the campaign. Primarily what you've done is what you've done thus far, which is to get your child to the point where they can go, that you can launch them and they can send them off into the world to school. But there are probably a few other things that you can do. And so we'll just start there. This is the plan, as you see, the week-by-week plan. And I will turn it over to Kelsey, who can just say a little bit about those comments about where you can find the campaign in social media.
Yes, the campaign we've been sharing throughout this semester. Red Hawk Life is an Instagram and X account that is student facing and posts all about campus life, everything that it means to be a student at Montclair. So we post there, as well as working collaboratively with Montclair Health Promotion, which is one of our departments who help with all types of health that has everything to do with your physical and mental health. So yeah, those are the two accounts that we usually post. We do postings, reels, as well as story postings. So definitely follow them if you want to keep up with our projects.
And Blanca, if you could tell us a little bit from your perspective as a professor on why this campaign makes sense to you and what your experience is with helping students become strong.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the parents on this call or video or Zoom. I also am a Montclair State parent. My daughter is a second-year student. So this is my first time as a parent also guiding a college student into success. And it's really important, I think, to involve faculty in the way that Dr. Isaacs is doing right now by developing this Strong Student campaign. Because one of the things that we've noticed, I think for me anyway, students really come in nervous, right? And they have a lot of anxiety. I find that the majority of the students really want to do well, but the shift from being completely guided in high school, right? So every 45 minutes you have a class and then you switch over and things like that, to the transition of having to think about what your schedule looks like even during the week. I think is something that, you know, as a university, we're very attuned to. So to me, ensuring that not just the faculty on campus are involved in supporting our students, but also families, right? So when I was growing up, I'm a first generation college student as well. And I, you know, I could not go to my parents, right, to talk to them about, you know, how to be successful. But my parents also taught me the values of persistence, right? So if you're a parent who's never been to college, and you feel like you're helpless, I want to encourage you to know, you know, that my parents supported me in other ways. That's that cultural wealth that my family has given to me, right? So I would say that, you know, as parents who come from different backgrounds, maybe many of you are Spanish speaking or speak another language at home. Those are strengths, right? And those are the strengths that I would implore you to continue shaping and instilling in your children. And, you know, but also challenging us as faculty, you know, just as I see the questions that are coming up here, right? You know, let us know what we can do better as a university, because you know from your perspective what your student may need support on.
So we're going to show you the campaign, what the students are going to be seeing. So the campaign is a theme a week. The theme is going to be in social media, and many of your instructors are going to be flashing this screen on their PowerPoint when the class begins. And as they walk around campus, they're walking, you know, waiting for an elevator, walking by a digital screen, they'll see the same message. So we don't want to make assumptions. We don't know what young people know and what they don't know. So Blanca and I, excuse me, Dr. Vega, forgive me, Blanca, I mean, Dr. Vega, she and I know that nobody should walk into our classroom with headphones on during class. But we can't make an assumption that the students don't know, so we're just going to put it on the screen. That's an example. We want to show students, be very clear, this is how you don't just show up for class, but you attend class like you mean it. Have any comments to add for that one, Dr. Vega?
Yeah, so I would say that if your student needs the headphones, that's something that you should let faculty know the first day. Encourage your student to let faculty know why. You know, there may be issues, you know, concerning ability or perhaps, noise cancellation. I know some folks some students really want to cancel the noise out, particularly the students who were, enclosed, right, during COVID. And I find that a lot of students who, really studied during that era were just in one space in their room. And so going out into the world, they needed to cancel that noise out. So I would suggest that if it's necessary, that when they walk in, they really need those headphones to alert the faculty member, and then encourage your students to start taking them off, because you are going to need to listen to your faculty.
Kelsey?
Yes, I think you guys hit it right on the nail, but also as a recent alumni of Montclair, what helped me was my parents knew my schedule, so they weren't texting me during class. So maybe that's something you as families can do. Know when your student is in class and try not to text them during that. Maybe text them right after. And also maybe ask them questions about their classes, like where's their favorite place to sit, different things like that, and advise and encourage your student to do these things as they're going through college.
Great. And we'll look at the next slide. So, again, a legacy of the pandemic. And actually, my son who's 16 is still here. I'll say, Toby, why do you have all these zeros in your, why do you have all these zeros? He goes, no problem, Mom. The teacher doesn't mind if I just get it done at the end. Well, you can imagine what I say to my son. As an instructor, I don't want you to do it at the end, because then you're not getting the learning while we're going along. So I actually give students penalties if they don't get the work done on time. There might be some opportunities for circumstances where it's going to be okay, we're going to manage it. But in general, and it says it on my syllabus, do your work on time and there'll be a late point deduction. The point of that is not about me being a jerk. It's not about me being tough. It's about their learning. So we are really working on helping students to rebuild that kind of habit. Boy, time management is tough, but learning how to meet deadlines is incredibly valuable for the rest of your career. Dr. Vega.
Yeah, I would say that would be a great specific question. I know that many of us parents struggle, right? We ask our kids, like, how did you do today? And they're like, fine, good. But a very good specific question might be, what is the lateness policy for each of your classes, right? Because that's something else that varies across course. It's not a system-wide late policy that everyone adheres to. As Dr. Isaacs mentioned, she may be have one policy, whereas that certain points are taken off, whereas in another classroom, more points may be taken off, or there is no lateness policy because maybe the class semester is shorter, right? So in shorter semesters, sometimes lateness is not an option. I know I've taught 4-week course, semesters. And it just isn't. I would say that lateness is not an option because it's 4 weeks, right? So a really good question would be, what is the lateness policy? What is your absence policy for each of your classes? Because the university does not have a standardized lateness policy for all the classes that your student is taking.
That's a great point, knowing what those expectations are. And another thing that you could ask your student is, what is the syllabus? Like maybe you look at the syllabus over with your student before this semester starts, and so you know what is expected. And ask your student what kind of strategies they have in place to make sure that they submit their work on time. Do they have a planner? Do they have a Google Calendar? What can they do to make sure that they're hitting these deadlines?
Great. So planning, as we talked about, here's a little key we like to say, and it varies. So there's one course where there's going to be tons of homework. If your child is in science and mathematics in particular, what they say in calculus, anybody can learn calculus, but it takes a lot of hours every week. So if you have calculus class 3 hours a week, you may need to do another 12 hours a week of homework outside of class. In general, as a rule of thumb, 1 credit hour equals 2 out-of-class hours. So most of your students have 3 credit hours, so that means they can imagine about 6 hours of homework a week. It's not going to be even. You're going to have a paper due in college writing 1, and they're going to be hemming and hawing about it. It's going to take them 12 hours 1 week. Then they're not going to have many hours. So it's going to vary quite a bit, but we like to help them think about planning their time. Often it starts off light, but it really picks up by the 3rd or 4th week. And so addressing those questions about time management is something we work on. We also have a tutoring center. That's what CAST is that you see on the slide, Center for Academic Success and Tutoring. And there's lots and lots of resources. They have peer coaches that help students manage their time. They don't just go to tutoring in a discipline. They can go tutoring in kind of how to be a student. So there's a tip for you. You can ask them. There are tons of tutoring centers. The main one is the Center for Academic Success and Tutoring, CAST. Dr. Vega?
Yeah, again, I would suggest that this is a really good question to ask your students. Some professors, they don't assign any papers and are mostly test-based, right? They give exams. Other professors, all they do is, they offer papers. Like I only do papers and, other projects. Sometimes they're project-based. So in addition to reading, and I would say that a lot of faculty, right, they switch up. Sometimes they mix readings with podcasts now. Faculty are becoming very diverse, with their activities. And I would say not to take those things for granted, right? Just because it's a podcast, for example, some students have not, in my classes anyway, have said, I'm just going to do the readings because the podcast, I can always do it. That's not really a good rule of thumb. I would take each of these items seriously within the weekly assignments. And I've also suggested to my students that 2 hours per 1 hour, course hour is super important. But I also tell my students to break it up, right? So we read for maybe 45 minutes, or do that for 30 minutes. And then for 15 minutes, you take a break. I don't suggest binge working. Binge working often makes students not want to see it again. So really encouraging your students to just take a bite of the apple every day, even if it's just for a half hour. Set a timer, give them some M&Ms at the end, whatever it is, but just for a half hour, and have them jump up from their seat, go watch TV, go play some video games, go for a walk. But taking a bite every day would be so incredibly helpful for them. And it's how, I actually share that with my daughter. She's the type that would rather binge the whole day. But she's also acknowledged that after 30 to 45 minutes, she needs to just see, look outside of the screen. So again, encourage your students to take breaks, but to take a bite off the apple every day.
I think that goes along with what we mentioned before as looking at the syllabus and looking into Canvas to see when those deadlines are and planning correctly. When scheduling family events, maybe knowing when those big projects will be and trying to plan them around what your student will be working on. Try not to plan things around finals, things like that to help your student plan their time better.
That's a great point regarding finals. Again, some faculty members will have class that week of Thanksgiving, for example, while other faculty, give them the week off. So really make sure, that you ask your student about each specific class, because as I mentioned before, faculty have different thoughts about each of their classes, and they're not all going to be the same.
All right, so we surveyed our students last spring. We were asking them, what do you do well? What is the struggle for you? We also surveyed our faculty. And seeking academic help was what both students and faculty identified as their greatest weakness. It is very hard. It sounds easy. I have had to say to my sons, I probably said to my sons, each son that's in college, maybe 20 times while they're in high school, maybe another 20 times in college, like, oh, I'm sorry your class is hard. Did you go see your professor? Oh, that sounds like a big good time to go see your professor. I would say that again and again and again. And now they do it. I got to tell you, they do it. I have a junior and a sophomore, they do it. But it's hard. You just got to keep encouraging them. And they're going to be nervous, it's going to be awkward. But going to see your professor is a very powerful way to advance your academic success. Obviously, the other thing, we always say to them is they can go to the tutoring center. But figuring out ways to get in touch with other people and to learn from all the professionals we have here and not, just from Google, because Google's a friend, but Google's not always the best friend.
I would say, yes, I would say that this is the part that sometimes breaks my heart, that students feel too afraid to talk to their faculty. And I would, really encourage parents and students to visit with their faculty and really I don't know if I froze. Okay, there I go. Again, like so many students often fail out of class simply because they do not tell their faculty member what's going on, right? I will guarantee you that the faculty member has a great heart, a great, has worked with students for many years, and if you let the faculty member know, I'm in trouble, I don't get this part, can you please, provide some support, that they're going to give you the guidance. Or if, there was an emergency, right? I can't tell you how many students disappear from a class unnecessarily. They don't have to. They should at least, connect with the faculty member over email, visit them during office hours, maybe Zoom hours, right? But we're not scary people. We really want your student to succeed.
And that's why we're here today. All of us want your student to succeed. We want to help you help your students succeed. So really encourage them to go to those office hours, take advantage of these services, and just foster that environment that emphasizes the importance of seeking help. It's not a scary thing. It doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that you're using your resources and you're a resourceful student. You can turn it like that. It could be a very positive thing.
Can I also add that really try to figure out how the faculty member wants to be connected with? Sometimes we have it on our syllabi, right? Like I prefer my students to communicate with me on Canvas. And I let them know that only students email me on Canvas. So I will never miss their email. Whereas on my Gmail, they may have to wait 48 hours because a lot of my colleagues will email me on the Gmail. Whereas on Canvas, I always tell students, email me through Canvas. Again, that might not be the preferred way that a professor wants to be, provided with communication, right? So I would, again, strongly suggest that that you have a cheat sheet for your child, or that your student has that cheat sheet for themselves. How does my professor want me to deliver a message? And teach email etiquette. We don't need to hear, hey, you, or hey, what's up? Like, I really like it when students say, dear Dr. Vega, dear professor. I think that's something that, to be a strong student, it really goes a long way.
All right. All right. So we know that there are lots and lots of health needs, and that's part of being a strong student. So there are a health promotion center and lots of our offices really work to help students to make smart decisions around their health. Small, simple behaviors around what they call now sleep hygiene, something I struggle with, are very important. And so they were going to include that messaging throughout the semester, but also through our course. I mean, through our course, these slides. I'm sure that there have been lots of information about the mental health services that we have. One that I'll just highlight is You Will. The state of New Jersey is providing online therapy through the end of 2026. So there's really robust services, and there's lots of different groups and ways to take care of your health. And the Student Health Center, which is clinicians, there's a full range of services right in the health center. They don't always have to come home to treat their physical health. So that's just a message. We have, I think Kelsey's part of the team. We have, I think, a pet dog. What is our dog's name?
Pebbles.
Pebbles, how did I forget Pebbles? That goes campus events, a very popular figure. And and Pebbles provides some kind of, emotional therapy too. And it's just sort of a fun element of our campus.
In addition to all of the resources we have on campus and encouraging your student to take advantage of these, is to regularly check in with your student how they are feeling health-wise, mental health-wise. There's so many different things and aspects that goes into being a student, whether or not they're overwhelmed, maybe they just need to get out and have some social experiences. Like, it's not all about studying, but taking care of their mental health as well. And social media could be a great part of that. Seeing what other students are doing can really help them try and experience those things as well.
Our next slide is about absences. So professors have different policies about absences. My policy is to say you should never miss my class because you paid for it. And you should always come to my class because it's going to be an interesting experience. You're going to learn something. You don't know which class is going to be the class you regret missing. So I discourage any absentees. I may have a policy which says if you miss one class, two classes, it's not really going to affect your grade. But just because you're not in my class that day, that doesn't mean the work isn't due. And I don't want to receive an email which says, "Dear Prof, did I miss anything?" Because that implies that maybe I just was there, like, talking about my dogs. I was there teaching. So every day is a valuable day. And this is a big shift. This notion that prioritizing making class as a very high priority, that's something we've really seen change. And we are working at it and sending that message to students. So of course, the favor you can do is don't schedule anything during class time. Occasionally your child is gonna get sick. Kelsey can't go to class tomorrow if she had class because she is sick. But other than that, unless you really can't make class, make it to class. Blanca?
I'm with Dr. Isaacs on this. I also discourage students from missing my class, but also there's some classes now that are completely on Zoom. And some classes, there's really no reason to miss a class anymore, right? Especially if your classes are online. And the more that you are aware of their schedule, the more support you can provide your student. Again, it's one of those areas where, if you miss a class, your student should really ask. In my class, the policy is ask your classmates first. One, because again, to repeat the same items, it may not, be interpreted the same way as a peer, right? The peer might, or several peers might be able to share like notes, perspectives, thoughts about the class. As much as possible. I mean, when I tell my students 14 weeks is not enough. It just isn't, and when you miss one class, you really do miss a lot. And the readings are just enhanced by the classroom experience, whether it's on Zoom or in person. So again, I do encourage you to, ensure that your students are attending class. And I will say this, if students miss, a number of classes, some faculty members will fail them. And this is not to be punitive, but it really is something for you to think about, because after a certain date, you know, you're still liable for that class, financially liable for the class, right? And we don't want you to miss because you miss so many classes and then have to fail out or get, below a C, in the class and then have to take it over again. It just doesn't make any sense, right? Like you're spending a lot of money, and if you're getting financial aid, it's the same thing. You're still going to owe, for that class. So for me, I always encourage students on an economic perspective, right? Do all that you can to attend and to pass the class. You don't want to be economically liable for a class, that is you can no longer withdraw from because of certain deadlines were missed.
I do agree. Even as a student, I did agree with these expectations of you do need to attend class and you should reach out to your classmates first. A lot of the professors post the slides on Canvas for the entire chapter. So even if you do miss a class, ask your student if they've reached out to a class member and if they went over those slides that they missed, if they reached out to a professor if they didn't get an answer, and just keep reminding and encouraging your student to catch up.
So our next slide is about self-awareness. And some of us, particularly in the first year classes, work to help students develop their self-awareness. But as I said at the beginning of the webinar, it's, reflecting. I mean, I know, like I work best at Montclair State. I'm there 5 days a week. I'm there a lot. I work there because I'm really productive there, sitting in a chair, at a desk. Not so great on the couch and in my bed. Doesn't really work for me. Other people, if that works, it works. That's a picture of our library, and that library is full of students who have discovered that they just need that environment to study. It's about that reflection, and it's going to take them some time. If you look at your child's schedule, suddenly they have so much time, and they got to figure out how they're going to portion that time, and that's going to take some reflection. Our students struggle the most their first semester. That's where we see students getting in some grade trouble, most likely. That's okay. We've seen students struggle their first semester and get some grades that disappoint them. As long as they reflect on that, they can probably figure out some simple behaviors that they can adopt in the spring semester. You don't want that for the fall semester, but this is also a learning semester about learning how you learn in college. Dr. Vega?
Yeah, I agree. In the past, I would say universities have not done well with creating spaces, for students to study. And Montclair, and having worked at different institutions, Montclair has so many spaces where students could, and this is when the headphones come in, put on the headphones, cancel the noise outside, sit down at a table in a chair, because I guarantee you there's going to be a cafe next door, or close to it, and like I said, 30 minutes. 30 minutes of reading, 30 minutes of just reading what the assignment is about and drafting an outline. And, and I tell my daughter, okay, after 30 minutes, call me and we'll FaceTime and we'll talk about, and I may know, and she's studying linguistics. I know nothing about linguistics, right? But I'll ask her questions, right? Be a learner with them, like ask them questions. We've studied, with her. She does little note cards, and she'll have us practice in the car. I'll ask her questions. I start learning with her too. And it's a very exciting time for me, as a professor, that I can learn along with my child, right? So be curious. This is a time to say, I got you 30 minutes and, call me after and we'll talk about your assignment. And, we'll have a discussion about it and everything, but be curious with your student. Just because it's not your major, or maybe you haven't gone to college, doesn't mean you can't be a learner with them. Have your student teach you as well.
I agree. opening up that conversation and even talking to your student about their own strengths and weaknesses. You guys know your child maybe better than they know themselves. So talking to them about what you see as their strengths, what you see as maybe something that they can improve on or something to avoid when studying. And maybe bring in your own experiences and advice as you grow with them through this experience.
And we're getting, our next slide is about community. Students persist and get the most out of college if they make some connections outside of their classrooms. So some people make connections through social activities. A lot of students make connections through a club. Sometimes when they get in their major, they can make a connection to other students in their classes. It doesn't really matter so much what the connection is. Some students make connections at their work-study job or at the job they have on campus. I feel very connected to the students in my office, and then they become connected to one another. You don't need to do everything, but finding a place where you, with people, most importantly, where you feel connected outside of classroom is something we're hoping that your students can develop over time this semester. This is week 8. We're really sending this message around week 8 when they're beginning to get to wonder, like, they've got school down. We want them to take the next step and make community. Kelsey's team does tons of work in this area. So she's really kind of a leader in making community. But it's something that we all encourage. And there's a huge group of folks, as you saw when you dropped your kids off on campus, or if you have, a huge group of people that are working to make provide activities for a diverse range of students. And Kelsey just dropped in there. This is the Engage tool, which is how students find these groups, clubs, teams, events, etc., and find out what's available to them.
Yeah, and I would also encourage families whose students commute, right? I think often commuter students, feel less engaged with folks on campus just to find that one activity, right? And I, if it's a campus job, right, to connect with, again, your supervisor, find out, like who, what they should be involved in. My daughter started connecting with folks in her major since she already knows what her major is, right? And she's like, maybe I'll develop like a little club, right? Like a student organization around that. So if your student doesn't find the thing that they are most connected to, there are people on campus and student life, who will be more than happy to talk with you about how to create a club, how to create an organization. And the Office of Commuter Life, they're dedicated to students who commute to campus and don't live on campus. So if you're a commuter student, if your family is a commuter family, right? Because we're all our students' community. But if your student is a commuter student, please connect with the Office of Commuter Life. That way you will find, what's available to students who commute to campus.
I totally agree. And you can use that link as well to explore different clubs and organizations and send them to your student. I do believe that you won't get to see full access without logging in, but you will get to see some things. And if you look up clubs and organizations on our website, you can view a list there as well. So just encouraging them to get out to different events, especially if your student is a commuter, if they have some extra time on campus, getting them out and involved with our community.
You're going to watch now. We're going to switch from week 8 to week 14, not because we're fast forwarding, but because we repeat the campaign. So it's time again to remind them to take care of their health and to deal with their absences. But finally, at the end of the semester, this is really just celebrate. This is a picture from the masked ball that they had last year. And there's all these great pictures. I had a hard time choosing which one, but they look pretty adorable. And I love seeing them having a good time. When you get your kid home at some point, asking some questions. That's what we're going to do at the end of the semester, where I'm going to ask my students, and many of the instructors are, what went really well? What was really challenging? So we're going to always be pushing students to celebrate their successes and also to reflect on what was successful for them.
Yeah, I think again, if they can bite off the apple every day, there's something to celebrate, right? Every day we tell my daughter, you're getting closer to the finish line. And she couldn't believe how quickly freshman year went, right? And so, every day you can celebrate a little bit. When, she came back home, we went out, and had a big fancy like, dinner after the first semester, and we did it again after the second semester. And I think the second time we just did a cake at home. Like, you did it, girl. You did it. Like, look at this. Like, second year, like she's, but every day I think it's worth celebrating a win with your child, especially as, guardians, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, whoever you are on this Zoom call, really, just celebrate yourselves too. Your student is making it through college, and they're taking a bite every day off that apple, getting closer to graduation, and that's something to celebrate.
It is definitely something to celebrate. Reminding your student that they are doing great and encouraging them throughout the semesters and throughout each and every day. It, I, I have to say, it does only get harder. Their classes will get harder as they move along and go through each and every semester. So celebrating those wins every semester is something great. And I do want to take a moment to look at this last bullet, is also taking some time to reflect. What happened this year that maybe they could practice for next semester? What skills can they improve upon to make sure that those little bumps weren't as bumpy as maybe they should have been?
So I hope we can open it up and have some questions. You can read the slides. I bet you all can read these about what you can do. But a couple reflection points that you can see there. Yes, it's about the tricks, absolutely. And it's engaging your students with conversation. It can be hard to feel patient with one's child. I know. I always find the car helpful, and try not to lecture, but to ask questions. Very helpful. Things are better when I do that, when I ask questions and withhold judgment. But then the other thing is, like, and especially now that they're getting older, is share your experiences of struggle. That's really important. And so that's what I really have to say. Any final words from Blanca or Kelsey before we hear from parents? We'd love to hear from you, actually.
Yeah, I just again want to encourage you, no matter, again, my parents, did not graduate from college, but yet when I came home, they were really interested, and they still know how to ask me questions to this day. When I tell them, what does a professor do, and the kind of work that I do research in, I've had to learn how to translate this in Spanish, but it's only because they asked me questions, right? And they didn't just ask me, how am I doing? Right? Like, my parents were curious. One time I was telling them, when I was a doctoral student, said I'm doing research on, immigrants in higher ed. And my mom immediately, switched the channel off of ABC and put on Univision or Telemundo. And she was like, you're going to hear more about immigration on these channels than you are on those other channels. She already like was connecting, right, my work with what she could offer me. So I just want to encourage, as parents, the first few weeks, there's a lot of fire, right? And there's a lot of excitement. And then things start dipping in October, right? It just gets a little tougher. The weather changes, the excitement starts to subside. That's when you can be the best cheerleader, right? And really just say, okay, what's your win today? My son who's 7, we do this all the time. What's the best thing that happened to you today, and what's the worst thing that happened to you today, right? Even like, but be their best cheerleader. And I would say that the best time to really do this is in October. October and November, when they're getting midterms, but really be there for them during that time. Right now, they got a lot of people encouraging them, but in October, November, then things starts going into a lull. So that's when you can come in. That's when you can be their best cheerleader. And even if you've never gone to college, I promise you, if you're anything like my parents, they're my biggest cheerleaders to this day.
I agree. Just be their cheerleaders. Sometimes they're gonna go through some rough patches. They may be a little attitudey throughout those midterms and finals, but being there for them and just asking those questions anyways can really make a difference. And taking all of these tips and implementing one at a time, maybe in your own different ways. You don't have to do every single one of these, but knowing what's best for you and for your family and for your student is how you can be the best cheerleader for your student. If you do have any more questions, feel free to email redhawknews@montclair.edu. I just sent it in the chat. We will be happy to answer any of your questions, and if we do not know the answer, we will direct you to someone who does. So you can ask more questions there. I hope you all very much enjoyed this webinar.